Excellent. Welcome to TADSummit Innovators. I'm really pleased to welcome back Noah. Noah, how are you?
I'm well, Alan.
Excellent. Now, Johnny's going to provide a little intro to you because Noah, he's not going to blow his own horn. So, really, to help you understand the breadth and wealth of knowledge and experience Noah brings, Johnny's just going to do a little preface on him.
I'm excited really about blowing his horn. It's about a lot of pressure on you here, Noah. We've been screaming. We just had a podcast with the czar. We've been screaming about spam, good spam, bad spam. I mean, you got messages that don't really matter. You got political messaging that whether anybody likes it or not, it's never going to stop because, political is free speech. It's part of our country. When the politicians can stop trading stock, then maybe you can stop sending messages, which is not going to happen. So the whole ecosystem, the good spam versus bad spam, we believe you have the solution. But I just want people to know out there how long you've been in the industry, and on the ecosystem side. You know what I mean? I mean, you were involved with Stomos as an advisor with Gene Liu and Doug Gardner for many years. You part of the fight, the zip whip fight, the whole 800 registry fight. You were involved with Doug back and with Twilio. I mean, look, if Doug Gardner and Michael Hazard didn't sue, they never would have been public because they were getting shut off all the time. So people need to understand that from our perspective, hard time tracking you down anyhow, but you're now, and, you've got a solution on many levels and on many fronts that we're excited about because it's one thing to tell people, hey, fix it, fix it, fix it. It's another thing to come out and say, you know what, we believe there's a solution here. And from my money and knowing everybody in the industry, one way or the other, as well as Alan, we don't see a better solution. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are trying to copy it and what have you. But so I just want people to understand. And look, a lot of stuff's going on now. All the players, what's going on. You've been involved in all the working sessions on identity, on messaging, and whatever. Everybody respects you. People fear you because you're too smart as well. But I know that you don't know that, Noah. So look, I think this is a clean slate, and we have an opportunity to allow you to explain, why is this needed and wanted by the consumers, number one. You're giving them an option. And how do we get to the next level? So I just want people to know how important this podcast is. I mean, we went from the most important podcast we did with Czar, where we brought in the top attorney in the industry, outside of Rick Joyce, who's retired now, to you. And so that's all I wanted to say. A lot of pressure on you, Noah.
Thanks so much, Johnny. So keeping it tight. So Noah, maybe we kick off with explaining some of the philosophy behind TNID, because I think starting at the high level, then going down into SSI and some of the implementation issues, I think is the scope we'll try. So please help us understand why you created it and the sort of the core concept behind TNID.
Well, I thank you for that, and Johnny, thank you for that intro as well. I have been in communications a long time and advanced communications technology a long time. And throughout that history, we faced all kinds of issues as we evolved technology, whether it was the network elements like IP as opposed to TDM underneath, just as we changed the network underneath from telegraph to telephone. I mean, we evolve our technologies, whether it's the calling type, messaging type, communications type, and now we're in another crossroads. But flashing back in time, I had the wonderful opportunity to educate the world about text enabling a regular IP enabled phone number. Just as exciting, it was really exciting for me because flashback even further than that, when I could take a telephone number and put it into an IP network. It was that same type of excitement for me because now it gives the ability to program things way differently than having something hardwired from point A to point B. And by doing that, it also comes with its hazards. And back in 2007, I was introduced by a friend, Enlai Chu, to discover something that he had discovered. He said, go find me what I heard is out there, which is text-enabled IP numbers, voice over IP numbers. So I went out there and lo and behold, I found them. And lucky us at TSG Global, we were one of the first 5 carriers to text enable landlines or IP numbers back in the day. And when I landed on that island, it was a crazy, crazy, crazy world for me, because I thought it was going to be this mirror image of this world I came from, being the voice world. There was a lot of playbooks in voice, how to move numbers around, how to secure numbers as much as you can, how to at least claim ownership and attach them to things. And what happened with IP and telephone numbers is there was a disconnect in identity at that point. Now combine that and compound it with an entirely new ecosystem that just dropped onto a telephone number. So in other words, now a telephone number lives in 2 different parallel universes with 2 different players involved. Now you'd imagine that that was common if you think about it, because you pick up your cell phone or you pick up your landline and there's multiple services delivered on that.
Yeah.
In the telecom space, and when you really peel that onion back, those are all individual layers of service combined, bundled. So even a simple phone call is at least 2 bundled services together. So you have to understand that when you add other elements like an entirely different ecosystem, routing system, billing systems, fraud and detection systems, it was a hot mess.
Yeah.
So as it started to evolve in the early 2010s, let's say,
Yeah.
I had some real issues with this, because it was unstable, it was tribal, it was what I call landing on the island of Dr. Moreau, where everything was wrong, everything just didn't fit.
Yeah.
If you didn't know somebody, you would never get anything done.
Yeah.
Now, in telecom, I get that. You do know a lot of people, you create a wonderful network of wonderful friends that really help you along, whether you're helping them up or they're helping you up in your career. And that is an important element here, because we're all supposed to work together. And that in voice, as fractured as it is, it gave us some level of, some semblance of community.
Yeah.
Now, when messaging started to really take off, it was this company named Twilio. And Twilio, like all of us, just wanted to deliver a product to consumers.
Yep.
And at the time, when you come from a very strict, let's say, hardware world, right? In a hardware world, we'll associate with the telecom infrastructures.
Yep.
And then you collide with this software world where there are no walls,
Yep.
no rules. It is literally in the air.
Correct. Yeah.
There is no hardware, it's software. So you have these 2 very clashing mentalities that now have to work together. And I looked at the messaging ecosystem as a whole bunch of software people, and the telecom side is a whole bunch of hardware people. Or back in the day, let's say in the voice world, when it went IP, it was you had a voice team and you had an IT team, a data team, and that soon became one. And now we're in that same world of you have a messaging team and you have a voice team. And what are you going to do with that? Because they come with very different skill sets in the routing and compliance and all this stuff, and risk, frankly.
Yeah.
So now I had all these problems of software companies like a ZipWhip trying to take over a telecom asset and just dismiss everything that was associated with the licensed operator side. So it became this really contentious type of battle between this hardware mentality and the software mentality. And it spilled right onto the steps of the FCC, where the software folks are trying to, ironically, speak to you, right? Alan, saying, hey, it's all software. We need to evolve. Let's shake all these regulations loose. Let's go. Let's go. Well, where did that get us?
Yeah.
Right? Like sometimes you need the law. And sometimes this is why I'm an independent, because I need to see both sides, whether it's an issue in tech or an issue in politics, right?
Yes.
I sit on the fence to watch it all like a bird on a wire.
Yep.
It is sometimes quite amusing. That said, we now live in this moment in time where back in that moment, we had all this chaos of who can send to who, how can you send it? Twilio is getting blocked. We were fighting in the trenches because you had the software company named ZipWhip saying, hey, we have a place to store all that data. It's called our database. And we're like, wait, but you're a competitor.
Yes.
Wait, you're the only place we could go. Wait, FCC, help. So we all went, and that really was the genesis of it all, Alan. Because at the moment when I was in that room with now the chairwoman and all these folks, and I sat there trying to explain with my counterparts how important it was that we maintain some level of accountability and transparency and relationship surrounding a licensed number with licensed responsibilities and an unlicensed side, or a and the FCC came out and clearly defined it, texting as a informational service, meaning they even went further than that. They literally identified in their statements, in their order, how store and forward, like an email service, works. It comes in, it stores it, and then it forwards it.
Exactly.
So in these battles, we won a little crumb of rights. What that became was another seed in my mind at that moment, because the order was around toll-free. Order was, hey, you have all these companies worried about it going all over the place, and they're really willing to work together and keep it unregulated. So let's listen to this one thing. But in that order, the FCC also defined that you no longer had to get authority from a REST board to do something. You just needed to notify them. And a REST board just stands for Responsible Organization, who's licensed to acquire toll-free numbers from who's the toll-free administrators. So in that, we now had this huge cluster of a mess that we had to go and try and fight and claw for any kind of rights. We got these little crumbs handed to us. But in that same moment, I was asked to speak at some shows, which I usually do, because everyone wants to know new tech, right? Like, why? And especially from a crazy guy like me with crayons, you know, crayons everywhere. So, and that's how I describe myself, as a kid with crayons. Give me an easel and I'll draw on anything. So in that moment, I was asked to speak at a show that had half interactive communication bots, AI, you know, I was talking about those things in 2010. That'll give you an understanding of, you know, now it's the big hoorah. So everything comes to its course. And in that, I was introduced by this person, Jeff Pulver, who was a mentor and he's a friend to me, who brings innovators and communities together, similar to you. That's why I love you both. I think you bring a value to the communities and bring the communities together, and I look forward to that. So he introduced me to this crazy tech called blockchain. I had no idea. I called him out. I was naming it all kinds of explicit, associating with crypto and all that. That's all I knew. That's all I knew. I think it was 2015, 2014, somewhere in that range. And so in those years, I started to learn this technology because I stuck myself in one of those little rooms. And I never would have done it if it wasn't for one of you people. And I say you people, I feel like I'm prejudiced or something. You innovative community gathering people, right? You magnets to all of us. So anyway, that said, now we found something that was a network, right? A new network. Just like when you figured out that you could do IP communications and move a number around and be all kind of programmatic with it, like Twilio did, and blew up an entire industry and added so much value to telco. They had to like fight the wars. It reminds me of, maybe someday we'll call them just like we call the Napster wars. Ironically, Napster played this, played this part in this war that eventually was named after them, where now we all enjoy being able to share music between each other and all this. It was called P2P. Sounds familiar.
We all pay for it. We all pay for it now too.
We all pay
So,
for it, but
okay.
P2P, person to person. How funny that revolution started with person to person, and one person that was fighting a huge industry that didn't want that happening at all. They loved their control on everything. And now we're in that same moment, because now the disruption is, okay, well, if we have this new technology and the technology of blockchain, if we just we'll go into a big conversation about this at some point. Basically, it just takes out all this noise in the middle and lets you trust that one position of data, like one block of data, hasn't been altered and changeable, so that you can trust it. Until you need to do a modification to that data and create a new block, which leaves the old block of data behind, immutably and unchangeably connected to each other. So you can always go back in time. And imagine that, even receipts. For me, I even think of as simple of, wow, if I had a place to keep receipts forever and they just sat there, it would be another junk drawer ride filled to the rim. You know, so yes, we have a moment that using a fantastic new technology, we can do something that's very special. So the philosophy came from, okay, if we have technology and we have a battle at the government level, that even to get a crumb is going to be a battle. There's only a few options left. And when I left DC that last time, I was asked to do things like, can we change the needle? Can we move the needle, Noah? And all these big companies were behind it. And I said, I'll try, but I promise you this. If I can't change it with policy, I'm going to change it with technology. And then it's out of their hands. And once I learned that, that's where I said, okay, this technology can support each individual controlling their data. And how can we add to this? And as we left that meeting in DC, at one point with the FCC, I had Jeff Pulver with me in an Uber, and I explained this concept to him because I wanted to solve spam. I wanted to solve identifying numbers that I knew that people were going to have a big issue with soon enough. This is about almost 10 years, 8 years ago, somewhere in that range. Think about that. I was seeing that coming, that storm over the mountains, and I said, something needs to change or we're going to be overcome. Ironically, maybe 40 days and 40 nights of trying to overcome something, but don't worry. I think I've created something that allows us all to not only stop spam, but stop any of this stuff that we don't want, and not trust that someone else is going to do it for us anymore. Put technology in our hands, because I think we've done pretty well so far as individual citizens with good tech. Let's see how much we can do and protect who we need to protect, which is the vulnerable. So, there's nobody that's going to protect our vulnerable but us. So we need to now show that we can do it, and then demand being backed up by our governance.
Or you do what France is doing, which is trying to ban phones for kids under 13, which right now I'm for it. But obviously it's not realistic. I got my 10-year-old nephew. They run circles around him. You take his phone away from you, he'll stab you. And he's, these kids are way more advanced than we were kids. But let's get into the solution. I mean, so that's a great background, great history. And Jeff Pulver, everybody knows he's a legend. I had the pleasure of meeting him once. Coming to try to meet you, actually. But let's get into the solution, right? How does it work? What is self-sovereign identity? What does it mean? You got all these data breaches everywhere. I mean, the country's become numb, right? Everybody's data is somewhere. I mean, just yesterday, $200 million fine, the mobile operators, which quite frankly, they're going to fight even though you find them $200 million, doesn't mean they're paying, right? So you've got all these data breaches. Everybody's information is everywhere. How do you stitch it up? And if you can't stitch it up, how is it stitched up from a consumer standpoint? Because the only thing I see that is going to be overhanging on this is political speech, which I personally don't believe it'll ever change because they got to be kind of brought along into it.
Yeah.
So how does this get deployed, Noah? And why are we so excited about this? Because I want people listening to be excited about the solution.
Exactly.
Not you or Alan, definitely not me, but the
But
solution.
So we'll put the political speech to one side because the track that I like Noah was taking was about protecting the elderly, because
Well, the
kids, you can
kids,
say they
vulnerable.
don't get phones.
Everybody.
Yeah, but let's
There's good
deal with the
spam and bad
entity, because
spam.
you can't tell your
There's the
parents they
messages
can't
that don't
have a
matter.
phone. So how do we
There's-
protect your parents as they grow older from spam, from scams, so that we're confident as their children that they're only receiving communications from entities where their credentials have been verified? You're ensured, because it's on the blockchain, that verified credentials have not been changed, and it's in a framework that is decentralized. There is no responsible organization. But anyway, sorry, I'm preempting everything that Noah's going to tell you. So Noah, please, you were leading up to it.
So
Noah thinks he's part of your team.
So in this journey, thank you, guys. In this journey, I also learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of lessons to be more humble, frankly. And well, what does that mean? And the humility part of the technology is that if it's done right, I have to build the base. Like I have to go deep into the plumbing of this. I can't do the awesome vanity everybody's going to point to and say, wow, that's amazing, or this walk-in shower with 17 lights and 18 shower heads, right? Like that's going to be amazing for people to build on this, but without what I swear I've been tasked to do, is to build the infrastructure, the plumbing. This interoperable way to manage your newly found ownership of this digital data that you've been leaving behind for so long, like holes in your pockets and pennies rolling out, or dollars, or in most cases a lot more than dollars.
Or hands in your pocket.
Or hands. Well, trust me, they're shaking your pockets to get the money out fast, right?
Yeah.
So let's just be real about that. And that is not facilitated or pulled off by one party. It's an entire ecosystem of participants. And when you face that kind of challenge, you also face a lot of headwinds. People don't want to give up money ever in the corporate world. And now Wall Street runs a lot of things because of that.
They run everything.
If it doesn't make
profit. All three mobile operators are public companies. People were talking about, well, why are they doing this? Because they don't answer to the public. They answer to they answer to their public shareholders. Nobody else. So that's why.
Yeah, I love the idea of that, though. I think the carriers. I've known carriers a long time. I've never known them to be super innovative. I'm not calling them out for anything negative. That's just saying, like, you don't expect a weightlifter to start doing ballet on their tippy toes, right?
Exactly.
You just
or an elephant to jump.
Or an elephant. I didn't want.
Yeah, I don't. Look, I think we need to move on. At the end of the day, it's not about them being innovators. It's about they have one thing that matters: their bottom line, providing the right service, not getting hit with $200 million fines too often, and just competing. So it's a triopoly, monopoly, whatever you want to call it.
How do you protect? I mean, you have an agent.
How do you protect the consumers?
Yeah. How do you protect? And I was challenged by I get challenged all the time by these things, and I love the challenge. Bring them on, bring them all on. I will find a way, unless you narrow it down to a single path of communications, or as I call it, If you only have one stagecoach path, you will never solve for fraud.
Yeah.
You just can never do it alone. You cannot think that your solution, including what we have, is the end all be all. It is an important element into an orchestration of things that that lead to those kinds of events. So I'm not here to stop fraud. I'm here to provide paths that people can trust. And if you can trust it, then you just dismiss all that fraud.
Yeah.
It's education by protection.
Yeah.
And if that's what we're supposed to do as we grow up, we're protected by our parents, right? We're protected and not allowed to do this, and can't sign off on a contract to do that. Medical paperwork we have to sign off on.
Yeah.
All these things, it's our responsibility to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we get older, our parents become that dependent in a sense,
Yeah.
right? And it's a soft dependent at first,
Yes.
and then you have to take things on more and more because they just lived an entire life of very either good things, bad things, a mix of all, but they're certainly not ready to listen to a lot of people telling them what to do, right?
Exactly.
No, it's not just parents, it's kids, it's vulnerable, it's people that don't aware what gives anybody the right to call my daughter or anybody else's kid without me wanting them to, without knowing who they are. I think let's just jump into the tech because
the tech allows you to first claim your individual identity. Then
explain that.
That means that basically your identity in the digital world really doesn't exist today. If you think that by you giving me your X handle or your Facebook page or any of that,
as people think,
that is yours. You're renting.
People think it is.
Yeah, you're renting, but you're using your data as paying the rent, right?
Yeah.
You're using your creations and content paying the rent on those platforms. That's what you do. You own nothing on those platforms. So my job is...
That's a critical point right there. The people need to understand, because I don't think a lot of people in the industry understand that. But you're right. Nobody owns their own data. They either give it away for free or it gets taken from them.
Yeah, and
you put out a post a couple of weeks ago about Dunkin' Donuts, walking into a Dunkin' Donuts, handing somebody your ID, your passport, your driver's license, having them walk in the back room, putting it in a paper bag and sticking it in a drawer, and then coming back out. And that's really what's happening. And people don't really understand that. People have given their lives away. They've opened themselves up. And what you're doing is giving them the ability to take it back. Whether the operators adopt it, whether other companies adopt it, you're giving people an opportunity to take back what belongs to them, which is their self-sovereign identity. Am I correct where I'm going, or is there another twist? Am I reading this the right way? Because I've been diving into this.
Yeah, I will tell you that, yes, you're right. You're absolutely correct that the consumer gets that out of this equation. The carriers and all the other participants also gain something. There's the value of it. We all gain from using this ability to real-time share data, in a sense, right? And let's associate that with an individual. Let's talk about that community. If someone's alone, they have nobody helping them out, right? They have nobody as a community. So usually you have these advocates there and like those kinds of folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
The AARPs and, all these associations for elderly assistants and seniors. What we need to do is put a heavier focus on providing resources to the elderly through these grant programs that are existing in the United States, and supply them with data protection through individual identity protection. And how can they do that? Well, let's say there's no family members. Well, there's advocacy programs, so they can be a proxy to be notified if something happens with a senior's identity, or a senior is being...
Yeah, it's kind of like a neighborhood watch program for just about anybody. It's a family watch program for your elderly, your kids. I understand. I think that's a level down. I
Yeah.
want to dive into, and I think people who are listening want to know, what the hell are these guys talking about? Because we've been singing this now for a while. So I'm
Mhm.
going to come back again. We can get into the semantics
Yeah.
and the philosophies, but I'm going to pin you down here. Because like I said, I got the czar. He's going to start looking at me with three heads too. Because I basically told him, look, you're the solution for his entire country of the people that are part of reach, right? These are people that are part of the country that want to do business, that people want to communicate with, that want to get messages from, that are being blocked. And that because other people overseas in different places and being held against their own will in other countries are just spamming and scamming and taking people's money. And it's just a disgusting cycle that's going on now. How do we stop all of this? I believe it's all stopped with your tech, right?
It
And I
can be,
believe
yeah.
that can be. It has to be, right? It
Well,
has
no,
to be.
it
And
can't be. They'd have to. People have to adopt it, right? You have to.
but people
You
have to adopt it.
choose
So,
to.
but explain it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
So
gonna
I
adopt
mean,
it once you explain it to them. So let's get there.
well,
Now,
let's
don't
start
cut me
with
off.
let's start with how it
Don't
can.
cut me off because I'm gonna reach into them. Let's go. Explain
Okay.
it.
Yeah. So how it starts is you make those who are going to fund it happy, which happens to be brands. Okay. So we're working with some brands that need to use aggregators that need to have communications to customers, right?
Yeah.
And in that, there's a lot of complexity. It sounds easy, right? Like, hey, I'm just gonna, communicate with the customer. No, 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 no. It depends where the customer is. Are they under a do not call or do not text or
Yeah.
do not this? Is it state level? Is it federal level? Is it county level? Is there some kind of blocking that they're going to do? Did they report a false positive? All that bullshit.
Yeah.
Pardon my French. But this is where the carriers have a problem too.
Yeah.
So you have this problem with this consumer getting a bad message. Well, how does a carrier understand where that message came from, how it's facilitated? Today, the carriers can't, they're big pipes. They don't see that granular stuff. They need a lot of help. So what do? They depend on the community, being all of us, to actually swipe right, swipe left, or report through the spam reporting device, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they react. This is all very slow.
Yeah.
So how do you solve for this? Is it really a TCPA violation? To your point, Johnny, is this a czar event? How does he protect his customer if that end user did opt in for something? Where is that?
Yeah.
Is it how difficult is it to produce that? Right? All of these are hair everywhere in that communication. So how do you solve it? Well, I want you to have your own identity. So I'm gonna throw a bone to all the other folks to get that to happen because I create tech. It's almost like in no way, shape, or form. Let's just say I love creating like people in the past. And sometimes when you create, you have to create things they want so you can do things that are really cool. And I always studied back like music and all those things and how that whole society worked and how you sent your kid off to just have a better life with a whole bunch of smart people, and now we just do it in a different
But
way.
you're giving people back their identity.
Yeah.
Nobody trusts anybody anymore. You
Right.
call the carriers big pipes. The ecosystem, especially in the messaging side, and I come from the voice as well. Some of these people, I wouldn't let them take my dog for a walk, and they're running, billion-dollar companies. So, how do I walk in? How do I come in? So there's two paths here. There's one, you being adopted at the regulation level, right?
Mhm.
They're going to be listening now because Azar's pointed everybody over here. Finally, we've got some attention through him and TCPA and FCC and these people, which obviously you know them as well. And then you've got the ecosystem that just that's making so much money on spam they can't stop. They really can't stop. I mean, what Citiverse put out a thing yesterday, 2 days ago. Alan posted it today. They're going to block all unregistered come December 1st, right after the election, or right after billions of dollars are made at 6 cents a clip for political messaging. Spam, penny to 6 cents for spam. unregistered, registered, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So we have a system, we have a situation right now where it's epidemic. AI robocalls, AI messages, all that stuff is taking an effect, and it's going to be horrifying. And it's already starting. Now, I'm a consumer. What you're building is for the consumers. And it's also protecting those pipes with the carriers. So really,
Yes.
you're going right directly to the carriers or to the ecosystem and saying, here's the solution. Number one, we're the consumers. We don't trust you anymore. We don't care if it's not your fault, who it's fault. This aggregator, like this thing that just happened, they're blaming it on this company and he resold it 86 times. And it's all this. It's this. It's left field, right field, left field, right?
Mm-hmm.
Consumers. You're giving consumers the opportunity, whether anybody likes it or not, to take back their own identity, to decide who can sell your identity, who can control your identity, who can call you, who are not going to call you, unless it's somebody under mandated political speech or nonprofit that has the right to actually call you. Outside of those umbrella, which I don't think anybody's breaking because you're just not getting past them, nobody else should have a right to walk into your house, to either a vulnerable person, your kid or yourself, or even to trick you, right? So that's the way I see this. That's why I'm so excited. But I need you to explain it to people that don't know what I know.
Well, you start with an individual, right? Like everything
Okay.
you just mentioned, whether it's your IoT devices.
But
in
so
your
far, am I correct?
yeah. Well,
I've been studying your stuff.
well, fridges, everything around you is quickly becoming electronically connected, right? That's what they call IoT. That, whatever you want to call it in the acronym world, just think, oh my gosh, I can touch it in an app, or I can, well, that's IoT. And whether it's a light switch or whatever, there are more and more around you growing. And now, how do you manage them? Do you keep having all these apps? Well, now, how do you know if somebody's going to hack it? Like the other articles that I saw you all posting was something to do with devices in homes being hacked, right? Like IoT devices being hacked.
Yeah.
We talk about these things all the time because it's not just about securing one element, your texting, or another being your voice.
Well, a lot of that will be solved at the SIM level. And I know there's people working on that because we get a lot of stuff. I want to talk about my phone number, my phone, my service, my texting, my calls. I believe what you've built solves for it all. I believe it. I'm putting
let's
whatever.
Let's do a use.
Do a use case.
One of the use cases we're doing a proof of concept with, which is just a joke because everybody wants it, is starting with an opt-in that actually allows a user to take control of that communication, opt out if they need to. So basically, what the brand is doing is going to use our technology to allow you to fork your information. Well, what does that mean? Well, in this, instead of just clicking through what you're going to click through anyway, oh, I accept everything, take my kids, take my house, whatever. Now I'm going to give you a path that's different because the brands are having so much trouble managing compliancy with you and managing third-party requests, like, did you do this wrong? And, all these class action lawsuits that the czar and others have to defend businesses from. Or it's the other way around. You get really hammered and you really want that company gone. It really comes down to how do you give that consent and how do you control it? I don't know if I'm sure you both have tried to opt out of an email recently. Well, try. What it does is it brings you down this rabbit hole, just for the audience. It will bring down this rabbit hole that eventually will come to this massive company that they say to you at the end, sorry, we deal with so many brands. We can't guarantee you're not going to get another email. What kind of result is that? And where do we have our teeth in the game in that? So instead of trying to fix that issue, how about we create a completely different shift in a paradigm shift? How about we define our T's and C's? How about we know they want to do business with us because that's how they make money. They don't even have.
You mean they come to you?
They come to us. They're trying to do it now. So the brands want to have access to you in an unfettered way, okay? So they have to also prove to the aggregators and to the operators what they're sending to, what the brands are sending across these networks to your handset which is their networks, right? The carriers' networks,
Mhm.
isn't going to harm you, right? They have this absolute fire around them of fraud happening, and no matter what they're throwing at it with fire hoses, it's growing, right? Like no matter what. And the registration process is out there. That's why they're struggling, right? That's why it doesn't look like there's any effect with folks like the TCR and that, because when you're throwing a bucket of water on a forest fire, good luck.
Yeah.
You're going to notice it. It's going to be like gone. If you don't keep investing into things and collaborate, you'll never put it out. So back to the opt-in. So our goal is to support the opt-in that forks your identity, creating you your first identity profile. We will talk in another episode. I'm not going to release news yet, but you all know what I'm doing and in the process of doing right now.
Yep.
There's magic I'm going to throw onto that. Isn't that amazing? I'm going to throw some magic on this profile. And in that profile, number one, you know, everybody creates profiles. No, what's the difference between the profile you're going to create and anywhere else I go? I can get all these bells and whistles at Google and, you know, at, you know, all these places that design for me, Facebook or Meta, you know.
You own it.
And the difference is I'm not here to own your data. I'm here to create plumbing so you can manage your data and you own your data. And it starts with something as simple as an opt-in. It's there, like all those use cases you were mentioning, Johnny, are wonderful. I can't wait for people to build upon the infrastructure to solve each and every one of these. Like we're going to be working with some of the innovators you have to plug on innovations onto your identity profile. So here now, just imagine your identity profile as like an empty iPhone or Android, right? Nothing came stock. Whoa, that's self-sovereign identity, like, because now you have this digital identity. That's what I'm creating.
Mhm.
Then we attach things like self-sovereign communications. Nobody's talked about this. I don't even know if it exists. I've been talking about it for about a week and a half. Maybe I just woke up and had an epiphany on it. That happens to me a lot. And some of them are very bad epiphanies. They're terrible ideas. But that said, I will say that in this moment, there is the ability for us to take control of our 2FAs. Well, what's a 2FA? Every 2FA you sign up for today with your cell phone number, you don't keep track of. I don't keep track of.
No.
So you don't know who's supposed to be texting you. You don't know if it was a valid text. Your number and name is so saturated out there because of all these data breaches.
Yep.
Is it impossible to get all the data back? Maybe, but you know what? It's not impossible to stop it and identify if others are using it without your authority. And that's where it starts with consent. So here, consent is driven by the brand. You manage your consent. It automatically puts a checkbox between your identity profile and the brand's identity profile because they're both identities.
Yeah.
They both have a place in this community of trusted identities.
So just
now,
to paraphrase, just to help get my head around this, because you use this term several times in terms of claiming an identity, to claim your identity. So what you're, again, I'm just going to paraphrase, given the words profile and then SSI. So by claiming your identity, you're claiming your TNID profile. Within that profile, there are, of course, many aspects, one of which is self-sovereign communications. So in there, if you ask, can I, my bank asks if they can communicate with me, and I go, yes, that would then, because they're both part of this ecosystem, the bank's identity, my identity, and the link between them for particular forms of communication are enabled in that profile. So just everyday interaction that is being recorded and entered into a immutable, because it's self-sovereign identity, so it's on the blockchain, where that agreement occurred, and so it's traceable. So if I were to say, no, I didn't give the bank permission, because you're using SSI, you can say, here is when permission was given.
Yeah, I'm going to put a twist on even on the
No.
opt-in on that, right?
Yeah, go
Because
for it.
you're circling in on it. It does come into permissions of read and write of your data, basically. It's the
Well,
whole database thing, right?
yeah,
And who gets permission to read and write? Well, administrators get this and users get that. And, you know,
yeah,
what's public? What's private? You know, what do you share with others in a limited way? What do you share with the world?
yeah,
These are all things that we come from telecom and we know pretty well, right?
yeah, yeah,
So now let's apply that to well, first off, you decide in the future what is going to be stored on the blockchain. There's
gotcha.
always the immutable element being
Yep.
the place you store it, just a big database, right? But the big database might be a small database for your family, you know, and it would
Exactly.
only store
Yep,
like
yep,
certain things there. So there's a whole bunch of things coming there. And we can go into the mechanics of blockchain and how different types of technology used on different blockchains
yep,
as users can take advantage of, right? Because that's what it is. What new app can I put on my phone, right? Like
yeah,
my phone being my identity, mine for a change. So
exactly.
digitizing out your identity first is validating that you have a phone number attached to your identity and you're not a bot. So we're
Yeah,
going to do a bunch of different little checks there.
gotcha.
You're going to
Understood.
build your identity profile in certain ways. When it comes to
Gotcha.
opting in, ironically, there's very little an opt-in requires in
Yeah,
the United States.
I'd
I was
say.
shocked to hear this. A phone number, a phone number.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
all I
Oh,
need.
yeah, yeah.
I
And
don't
that's
need
not
name,
really a
email.
verifiable credential, really, is it?
No, it's so weak. It's so
Yes,
weak.
correct.
But coming from telecom, I know all kinds of ways to fix that.
Okay.
So I know, and this is part of the beauty of blockchain, that blockchain takes a consensus of things. Now, why
Yeah,
do I say consensus? Well, a consensus means no one person makes that decision. It just doesn't
yeah,
work that way
exactly.
because there are a lot of smart people in the room. And if everybody has that same permission to review something, you can randomize who gets to look at it, but you know the outcome will always be the same.
Exactly. Yep.
Pretty cool
Yep.
stuff, right? So now let's apply that to you and your self-sovereign identity and the opt-in side. Now, how does grandma, who has her cell phone, because if she doesn't, then if an elderly person or a senior isn't tech savvy enough to have a cell phone, sorry, I can only do so much.
Yeah.
There's only so much I can do. But let's say she has her cell phone, she has her landline, right? And she's used the system. Let's fast forward. She's opted in for the bank
Yeah.
to
Well,
communicate.
people put their phone number down for everything and their landlines. I mean, people are text enabling landlines and getting into people's bank accounts.
Yes.
So, right. So, you put your information in a bank, it's your landline. They text enable your landline and break into your bank.
Well, they could do it with
Right?
anything. They've done it with numbers to get into your WhatsApp account. They can do it to get into what they'll do is they'll get into the neighboring technology and then infiltrate. There's a lot
Yeah.
to do with that. Like that article that was about the IoT was it wasn't really getting into the IoT. It was sitting nesting on your mobile device and then listening active, passive,
Yeah.
and it was really interesting technology. But that's why you need to be able to identify and authorize things.
Yeah.
So first, you need to trust who the other side is. So let's say it's
And
a bank.
also know if they're real.
Right, because well, how do you know if it's a real communication, right? So
Or a real person.
let's say that Granny and the bank have both. Well, the Granny has opted in to receive. Let's start with the hardest one, voice. Right, we're not doing voice right now, but this will give you an understanding of how it takes multiple channels to do something. Right.
Yeah.
So now you have both parties acknowledging that voice is allowed to be communicated.
Yeah.
So we're going to do something really fancy and have the identity profile notify Granny that the bank is either about to communicate with her or communicates through the network or communicates through a specific channel that the bank decides to choose randomly.
Mhm.
Now, right now, everything's just messaging because you have to start with what they call an MVP, which is just
Yeah.
minimum viable.
Minimum viable product. Yeah.
So in this case, we want to solve for opting in, managing opt-in, managing opt-out. So you as a consumer, let's say you just received or Granny just received, now let's take that to a text message. So Granny just received a text message from the same brand, okay?
Yep.
Well, how is she going to know the difference? Well, we have this archaic thing that she could use, like swiping left, swiping right, whatever. Or she can, you know, send these words: stop, quit, help.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what she's going to do. Or in the world of the messaging that we're going to deliver or allow the brand to deliver, because of that relationship that they just bonded between Granny and that bank,
Mhm.
we're going to give a link to that brand to embed into their messaging so they no longer need stop, help, quit,
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
They can use the link that now is a TNID link that shows Granny the connection between her
Yeah.
and the bank and when it was taking place, and allows Granny now, because it's in her profile, right, in her wallet, however we're going to call it, communicator, inbox. Inbox has been the most recent used because everything will come into it.
Yeah.
So, you know, what happens when it comes into that inbox? Well, right now, if it comes into that inbox and Granny wants it delivered 100% trusted, we're going to deliver it from Granny's identity inbox
Yeah.
to Granny wherever she wants it, email, messaging, you know, whatever. And that's
Understood.
what we're going to do for her. So there's your complete loop, because now if the brand gets accused that they've sent Granny an unsolicited message, they could say, whoop, go to the record here. Here's a tokenized lookup. Because you're an authority, you can get a tokenized lookup to see that this person did it, but you don't get to see the information of the person. And there's the other side of blockchain, is
Gotcha.
that because it's verified information,
Yep.
you just need to know that it's there.
Yeah.
You don't
Gotcha.
need to know her name, just like a lot
So
of people.
basically, your driver's license, all your information is not getting put in somebody's paper bag at the Dunkin' Donuts and put in the back room.
Yeah, just imagine how you go into
Well, I mean, this is important. It's important for people to understand this.
Yeah,
You follow me?
just
Yeah.
imagine what you do today when
No,
you.
I get it. I'm trying to talk to the people that are listening.
Yes,
I've
they
listened
need
to
to
you.
understand that this is as simple as carrying your own digitized driver's license, and step by step, we're going to add more to it, more tools for you to use by wonderful innovation partners, because all we want to keep doing is doing our job as infrastructure players. We will be throwing some bones out there so that we can have folks understand how easy it is to solve these big problems.
Yeah.
One of them is spam. One of them is phishing. Like, if you knew that nothing could get through your identity proxy, we'll call it,
Yep.
and you control that proxy, not a carrier. They can't control it down to that end user level. That's why they have all these apps like, you know, slide to the right and report it. And those are not bad, by the way. They're still great reporting. I'm not looking to kill all these companies. I'm looking to allow them to focus on very specific use cases that need that intelligence.
Yeah.
But I'm also working toward protecting our privacy in communications, because if I do have something that I said I want and I have it delivered to me in any way, shape, or form, you best not have AI listening in on that and harvesting my data. So there's a lot.
Which is definitely going to start happening. But also, you're giving people the power to have, whether it be brands or anybody else, to come directly to them. You're cutting out middlemen from a perspective of, you know, brands harvesting you to you being able to sell your own data. I mean, if you got to a group of, say, 1 million influencers and they got together, that group now has power to, with the brands, with the companies that want to reach out to them, because it all comes from brands and marketing, right? That all the bad players get in through different ways, whether it be a fake link from UPS or whatever it may be, or other calls that are coming in. I mean, you hear some of these people talk about like, well, just if they're not in my contacts, you don't get the call. It doesn't work at the end of it, because you're spoofing as many other ways to get in. So I think people need to understand what you're doing is you're empowering people to take back their own identity, control their own identity, and to keep that identity completely anonymous. Am I correct? Just the
Yeah, I mean, PII is called just like
why do I feel like I'm doing your job here?
well, PII
Personal identifiable information.
yeah, personal identifiable information, but it applies also in the telecom world. They call it CPNI, which is customer proprietary network information.
Yes.
Right?
Which Czar just did an amazing piece on TCPA World, just came out with it on the $200 million fine the carriers got on the location services. All this stuff comes together and it's all important. And I think we're in an important time right now.
Yeah.
TADSummit, the group that we're building, the community we built thousands and thousands of people in the industry. A lot of people don't want to hear us because look, they're making money. They have to make money. Twilio, biggest spammer ever. Why? Because they have to be. They can't control it. They don't care. They love it. They swim in it. Most of these guys do. And that's okay, because there's a lot of good spam. And the good spam is the one that doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really hurt anybody. But with that good spam comes the bad spam, right? I mean, right now, I just found out that, if you don't get your, say you're a political campaign and you don't get you don't pass the TCR, right? And they want to throttle you on a certain amount of messages, you can literally go pay a higher price to the operators and have no delivery on there. So you could pay a higher price. They'll deliver all the messages you want, all the throughput. They're going to send you a bill, even if they're not delivered. This is a money grab across the board. Again,
let me straighten
it's
that
all
out.
about money. See, you're going into an ecosystem now, Noah. I'm just warning you. Everybody's making so much money that they're going to look at you kind of like, hey, and I've had the comments because I've told many people, I'm like, well, you're talking about billions of dollars being made around the outskirts of it, right? You're not really hurting that. You're going to allow a lot of that stuff to happen. But what you're doing is giving the consumer the ability to protect themselves because we've lost our trust on an ecosystem that's broke. What's an information service? What's regulated? I mean, Czar thought that everybody had to go register. He didn't even know. And here's the foremost expert TCPA in the country. So I guess part of this thing is me. I want you to succeed more than anybody. I've been screaming for over a year on this whole nonsense, me and Alan. So we really need you to succeed because there is no innovators trying to solve what you're solving. There's no innovators trying to do other things, right? We had this other company trying to use AI and machine learning and whatever, and we're gonna solve things this way. But nobody's trying to solve it. Everybody's just trying to skate through and get to the next level. So what you've built that I've studied that we can't really cover on one podcast, it's important for us to continue to do this on an educational level for our listeners, our community, which will then grow. Because as you know, I'm a telecom Swiftie, right? I'm a telecom Swiftie.
Let me say it this way. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. So
a lot, and I'm sorry because I'm passionate about it.
No, and I get it. And I've been in this a long time, and I know a lot of how it can look too, right? Like there's things that resemble things like you had mentioned. It looks like the carriers and the aggregators, just are promoting it. This kind of activity has happened in the voice world and the SMS world for a long time, but it's not. It's because they're big pipes, right? They see, hey, did X amount of gallons go through here? Like if it's a water bill, right? A water meter bill, they're just looking at how much goes. Yeah. So really, it's difficult when that's their job, is just to make sure those big throughput pipes work.
But it's everybody's job is to make money. They're
Right, but
publicly traded companies.
the seedy
We all want
part,
people to make money.
the seedy part, there are, just like in voice, there are these seedy operators, right, that will figure out ways to get your traffic across, right? That's, you could fill in the blank. I could say that term and go into a voice show. It applies the same way. There are seedy things. How much can I fit into this big pipe? Because, you know, I'm allowed 5% of this other traffic, so I'm going to put it at 4.8.
Listen, I
that-
talked about it in the last podcast. I mean,
Well,
I was a hub.
right.
Cineverse used to pump all the A to P, which was then just P to P, and it was spam. Were they
Well,
seedy? Absolutely.
It may be people behind. Okay, so I'm never going to say that it's one or another, because it never works.
I understand what you're saying, but
what it works is these brands that are-
the criminals, the phishing attacks, the attacks on people, the misinformation. What AI is doing, you've got, you know, somebody recently went and took them 15 minutes. They voice cloned somebody's voice and pretended that it was their child's voice, right? And they got extorted for a kidnapping ransom. So you got so many different levels of this that, unfortunately, the excuse of it's just pipes, it's just that, it's all this, is out the window. Something drastic has to happen.
Right.
You have 51 attorney generals screaming. Why? Because they're constituents. These people are voted in, right? So what you have going on here, and they're just, and look, I don't know if you read a lot of the stuff that we're doing. We've done a lot of different pieces. Some people have read it, not read it. We have a different view than you, but that's okay, because you keep your view the way you're going as a designer. But we need this laid out more concisely. When can we get to a point where we're going to have a sign-in? We're going to have the ability to go in there, play with it. When are we going to be able to deploy this to the public? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
It's okay. It's okay. Well, there's very specific projects I'm working on. Well, number one, I'm going to take you and Alan to walk through the basics after this podcast. I will share with the rest of the world how it can impact them. It has to solve for them something, right? And that's how consumers adopt things. Yeah. So by giving them control over something that they're already doing, which is opting into things, as I start to evolve that with these proofs of concepts, the carriers want it, the aggregators want it, they all want this like solution, and it allows transparency even of the highest risk use cases. So all those dolphins that are getting caught in tuna nets right now can be saved. So it's not just protecting the consumer, it's protecting deliverability of good traffic too.
Yeah.
Because you do want to get notified by a school or, you know, something that there's something urgent going on. And how do you identify good traffic? Because if you always say, hey, it's this profile of negative and you block it, then that just leads to blocking good traffic too.
Yeah.
We need tokens and basically driver's licenses to say you have the authority to do this and you're going to be unfettered in this. And when we think about governance, and I do want to get into that because you started to lead right into that, Johnny, which is I work with governance as much as I possibly can. And I try and give feedback where I can to the FCC and FTC if they call me. Or
the governance is critical. And I think the czar is all over the FCC. I lost faith in them. They just came out yesterday, throw a punch. I think the heat's on them. I think the heat is on politically for them to solve this. And look, we all know what we're screaming about every day, me more than anybody. And the TCR was designed not to work, which is not the conversation today. I think it was originally designed, but there's the theory I have with Twilio and whatever, because I was involved as an insider and trying to acquire it. So I stumbled not because I'm smart. I stumbled upon what's really going on here. And it's about money. Always comes down to money. It's like I told Zara a long time ago when I was on his first podcast.
Yeah, what? They're making money. They're making money, but that's not
all about money.
Like I said, when the fire is like raging right? You see the raging fires in California and on the West Coast, right? Or in Canada. Uh, it's literally not about, hey, did you put the fire out yet? It's what's the level of containment? And I
Yeah.
want to associate what's going on here, especially in a political season
Yeah.
where if you think about what happens in politics, normally nothing happens in these years, nothing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nobody wants to lift a finger. And then if
Well,
it's swinging
nobody's
one
gonna.
way,
There was just a release. Nothing's gonna get blocked until December 1st. Right now, we already know messages have been blocked on one party or another. We've reported on a lot of the stuff through Bill Peters' complaint, which I don't want to bring up here. I want to stay focused back on. We do realize nothing's gonna happen until after the election, right? Things are gonna go where they're gonna go. It's gonna be spam central. But we're hoping that the building blocks that you're building, that we can educate the consumer, because at the very least, I see 20% of our country no different than I told Matrix when they were on our show last week, Matthew Hodgkins, uh, wanting this product for themselves. I see people I see people wanting to take control of their own identity because they can. There's a lot of people that care. A lot of people don't care. The sheep are going to follow wherever the sheep are going to go. People are too worried about their lives, paying bills, how they're going to pay their bills, how they can afford their groceries, who's going where, what's doing this. Life is difficult enough for us to have to manage our communications. It should be managed for us. Well, I'm hoping that you're that solution. I believe you are. So I'm
well, I
sorry,
need,
I'm
I
I'm
need
so
your help.
passionate.
I
I'm
mean,
gonna what?
you're already, okay. So if you answer your calls today, the robocalls, or get distracted by bad emails or bad texts,
I
right?
answer all of them.
I know, but just look at how much time that causes you
Oh, it's annoying.
action to get back into something, to reassess something, whatever it may be. I do want to get back to the governance though.
Yeah.
Like what they need to solve might be able to be solved now because of political landscape, right? So I am going to be just as right now I'm drafting a letter to the FCC. I'm going to request a meeting with the powers that be at the FCC. And I'm going to address this in such a way that I'm going to prove that identity can solve one of the biggest problems, that is one of the biggest technological core issues of how identity is stolen today in the digital space, and that's SIM swapping. SIM swapping means that there's a SIM card, either electronic SIM or a physical SIM, piece of plastic,
Yep.
that little shiny thing in the back, a little crooked edge to it, right? Always has that so it doesn't slide. Smart. That guy probably made, or woman made, like a fortune with that patent, probably. Anyway, so that being said, there's the SIM card that connects this serial number that's in that device to an IMEI number in the device that connects to this wireless telephone number identifier that's assigned to a telephone number. So there's all those pieces are attaching, and then that service is delivered over that SIM card, right? The
Yeah.
network is attached, and
Yeah.
that's how it works, right? And if someone takes that SIM card, and just think of it as you porting your own number, right? Like I want to move my number from AT&T to Verizon. That's actually called a SIM swap, right? Like if you have two electronic versions of that SIM card, you're going to take your service and take it off of one of these SIM cards, electronic or physical, and you're going to move it over to another. When
Yeah.
that happens, let's say I'm a fraudster who just did this to your grandmother. I'm going to get access to everything you had. I'm going to get two FAs, I will get anything I need, cascading into your identity and taking everything I can.
You're going right to the core of the main fraud, which is SIM swapping.
Yes, because if you could attach,
Perfect.
now imagine the consent piece right now that happens that I'm describing.
I didn't know this because you duck me all the time. But go ahead.
Well, the consent piece that lives today that I'm talking about, we're releasing for the brands, is proof in the use case that you can control the identity from the starting point in a circle all the way back. So by the time that user gets a text or a message or something, you can loop it all back together, and you can know that it's a secure message, know it's whatever, right?
Okay.
Now, when you think about adding a SIM card to that, and this is what Granny can be protected of. Hey, she's moving money. You know, hey, let's have 5 people in the family get notified attached to her identity profile in a family kind of cluster. We don't want Granny to do this. We're not going to allow this secondary activity. So you're putting the second channel. You're putting this. You're putting this unbreakable chain of management together that now, if Granny's phone had her SIM swap requested, it has to go through a carrier. Now, fraudsters are real smart. They pay people who are seriously underpaid in carriers in a call center environment.
Huge problem. They can't stop.
It's an inside job.
Yeah.
That's what happens. So you either have an employee in a store, you have an employee in a call center, or the company itself getting paid side money to actually approve these SIM swaps. Because once that happens, there's so much money that can be made by that. And no one is in the current technology
$1,000 a SIM.
with the current technology stack and the operators. And I have seen some technologies trying to address this, in particular SIM swapping, but they're all just one trick ponies, right?
It's a Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid. It's a triage moment. You need to go to the root of the problem, and that's what I tell my team. I say,
so you're writing this letter to the FCC. You're going to all of them, and you're going to make them aware of this, because that's really the biggest core problem to really heinous crimes and major dollar losses for individuals.
It even happened to the head of Nest years ago. You remember that? That's why texting was deemed not so secure, right? And yet it depreciated our main channel of like one of the like a lot of the big companies I work with, what they tried to solve for is different than what you might solve for. They just wanted to solve for, we don't want someone text enabling a number without our authority. And I work with some partners to start to create that in both the local and the toll-free side. You know, being a little crazy, they both have their own versions of that now, in a sense. But the problem was, it wasn't that, I guess nobody ever realizes that when I create things and I say, hey, it has to come off your network, it's not because your network works. It's because without adding a second network to it, it's always vulnerable.
Yes.
And that's the only thing I'm trying to add is another, like, so if you look at a cell phone has it needs a trinity to create identity. So it needs the serial number, IMEI number, service, and identity. It's like the serial number and the IMEI are usually together, so that's why it's a trinity. Now, if you consider what we can do with this technology and ensure that your SIM swap can't happen, it goes through the same type of notification system that only your identity can send something to you, and only your identity knows where to send it, and it may randomize what it sends and where it sends it. Therefore, what hacker is ever going to figure out randomized, communication across a multi-channel when it's in your control? And you could just go, oh, today I'll just have a setting in there eventually with templates, right? Where all your innovators are going to come in, Alan, like Matrix. I can't wait to have Matrix say, we're going to give you encrypted communications over this telephone number that you can also put into your account.
Exactly.
Right? Into your profile. And what else can you do with it?
So essentially, if the carrier gets a request for SIM swap, it still has to get your approval.
Yes.
It's as simple as that.
It's outside. So it's no longer an inside job. They will be called out when they do that.
Correct.
In fact, carriers can actually set up what they usually do for outside offenders is they set up these things called honeypots, where it's really luring to come in, smell, and taste the honey, right? And they get stuck in it. And that's the whole point of a honeypot, right? This is the same thing because they're all flies that come into the honeypot. Not good things, they're flies.
Okay.
So
anyway. I mean, gone way over time, but this has been very instructive in understanding the philosophy, the importance of the TNID profile, and how you claim your identity, and then use that to solve a number of permissioning problems. So, Johnny, anything you want to add at this point?
Yeah, I want to keep going with this because I don't know if he's going to come back, this kid. And I think I love what you're doing. I didn't know about the SIM swap, where you're going with that. I was looking to discuss how you can actually solve the problems that we're having right now with brands and the registry and all the spam that comes that way. But look, we need to get you back, Noah. We want to play with your tools and your platform. And I mean, we've got many different companies that have come in saying we can do this, we can do that, use us, what have you, and Scam Likely, and I don't know, and AI and machine learning, and go over here, and we're on the edge, and I can just keep going and going. So we're passionate about solving it, Noah. I know you, a little bit here. I know you from years ago as well. I know this is your passion. I know what you're building. Self-sovereign identity. I see influencers and people signing up for that all day long. And look, we got to get you back on the other side on what's going on here. So
we need everybody to take control. My final words on this would be, without all of us taking that first step in this journey together to self-sovereign identity, we'll never get to self-sovereign communications, meaning you will always have to worry who it is on the other end of the phone. Is it real? Is it a real communications? Because that shouldn't be what you have to worry about in this day and age. You should be able to trust your communications. And if it has to come through your trusted identity profile and your trusted number attached to your trusted identity profile, then so be it. And we hope to solve for a lot more than even what we discussed here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's massive. Again, thank you so much, Noah.
Take care now.